Picture this, a young black teacher, barely a week into her dream job, cornered by sneering bullies in a school where power plays and prejudice lurk around every corner. They shove her into lockers, thinking she's an easy mark. But what they don't know, she's got a secret weapon, a Judo black belt that's about to turn their world upside down. Get ready for a heart-pounding, fist-clenching saga of courage, comeback, and unyielding strength that'll leave you on the edge of your seat. Subscribe now to unlock epic stories like this that hit hard and inspire harder. Don't miss out on the ride of a lifetime. The fluorescent lights of Westbridge High flickered like a bad omen, casting long shadows across the scuffed linoleum floors of the hallway. It was a crisp September morning in 2025, and the air outside carried the promise of autumn. But inside these cinder-block walls, the atmosphere was stifling, charged with the unspoken tensions of a school straddling the line between privilege and struggle. Aisha Thompson, 26, navigated the crowded corridor with her head high, her navy blazer crisp against her warm brown skin, her glasses catching the glare of the lights. Her first week as a history teacher had been a gauntlet of lesson plans, faculty meetings, and the relentless task of memorizing 120 student names. She was the youngest teacher on staff, her master's degree still fresh, her passion for teaching. Kids who reminded her of her younger self, burning bright. But today, as she clutched her lesson binder, she felt the weight of unseen eyes, students, teachers, even janitors, tracking her every move. Westbridge wasn't just a school, it was a battlefield, and Aisha was about to learn how deep its fault lines ran. Westbridge High sat on the edge of a fractured neighborhood in a mid-sized American city, where old money and new poverty clashed, and racial undercurrents simmered just below the surface. Aisha had grown up in a place like this, a concrete jungle where survival meant mastering the art of resilience. She'd clawed her way out with a scholarship, a degree, and a fire to make a difference, but she wasn't naive. She'd heard the whispers about Westbridge, about the untouchable athletes, the administration's blind eye, the parents who pulled strings to keep their kids above the law. As she turned the corner toward her classroom, her steps slowed. A group of senior boys blocked the hallway, their Letterman jackets emblazoned with the school's snarling wolf mascot. At the center was Tyler Grayson, a broad-shouldered quarterback with a smirk that could curdle milk. His crew, Dylan, Jake, and a wiry kid named Connor, flanked him, their laughter sharp and deliberate, a weapon honed by years of unchallenged. A power! "Hey, Miss Thompson," Tyler called, his voice dripping with mockery. "You lost or something. This ain't your fancy college." His friends snickered, their bodies shifting to form a loose semicircle, cutting off her path. Aisha's pulse quickened, but she kept her face neutral, a skill she'd perfected growing up in a neighborhood where showing fear was an invitation for trouble. "Just heading to class, Tyler," she said evenly, stepping forward. But Tyler moved faster, his bulk blocking her way. "Nah, you don't get it," he said, his grin widening. "This is our hallway." The others closed in, their sneakers squeaking on the floor, their eyes glinting with the thrill of intimidation. Aisha's grip tightened on her binder, her mind racing. She could report this, but Principal Hargrove was notorious for protecting kids like Tyler, whose father sat on the school board. She could walk away, but that would only embolden them. She took a breath, her decision made. Before she could speak, Tyler reached out and shoved her shoulder. Not hard, but enough to make her stumble. Her binder slipped, papers scattering like confetti across the floor. A few students nearby glanced over, but quickly averted their eyes, unwilling to cross the invisible line that protected Tyler's crew. "Pick it up," Tyler said, his voice low and taunting. Dylan kicked a stray worksheet just out of reach, laughing. "Oops," he said, feigning innocence. The others joined in, their laughter echoing like a pack of hyenas. Aisha's cheeks burned, not with shame but with a slow, smouldering anger. She knelt to gather her papers, her mind flashing back to a moment a decade earlier, 15 years old, cornered in a different hallway by different bullies who thought they could break her. She hadn't broken then, and she wouldn't now. She stood, her 5'4" frame dwarfed by the towering boys, and met Tyler's gaze. "You're done here," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. Tyler's smirk faltered for a heartbeat, but he recovered, stepping closer. "What did you say, newbie?" Before Aisha could respond, he grabbed her arm and shoved her hard against the lockers. The metal clanged as her back hit, the sound reverberating through the hall. Gasps rippled through the growing crowd, but no one moved to help. Aisha's glasses slipped down her nose, and for a fleeting moment she was that 15-year-old girl again, heart pounding, palms sweaty. But she wasn't that girl anymore. Beneath her modest blouse, tucked into the waistband of her skirt, was a secret she'd kept hidden, not out of fear, but because she knew the power of a well-timed reveal. Aisha was a third-degree black belt in Judo, forged through years of sweat, discipline, and a national championship that had left her opponents in awe, and this was the moment to unleash it. As Tyler's hand tightened on her arm, Aisha's training kicked in like a reflex. With a swift pivot, she grabbed his wrist, twisted it behind his back, and used his own momentum to send him crashing into Dylan. The two boys hit the lockers with a thunderous bang, their shocked yelps echoing as they scrambled to regain their footing. The crowd gasped, phones snapping to life, capturing every second. Aisha adjusted. Her glasses, her breath steady, and said, "Touch me again, and you'll regret it." Her voice was calm, but her eyes blazed with a fire that made Tyler hesitate. His face reddened, humiliation warring with rage. He muttered a curse and lunged. Again, this time swinging a fist. Aisha was ready. She sidestepped, grabbed his outstretched arm, and executed a flawless Uchimata throw, sending him flipping over her hip and onto the floor. Dylan, charging to help, got a quick foot sweep that left him sprawled beside his friend. Connor froze, his bravado evaporating. Aisha stood over them, her stance relaxed but ready, her years of training, 5 nights a week at the dojo, countless sparring sessions, and a trophy case full of medals, giving her an unshakable confidence. "Get up," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument, "and pick up my papers." By lunchtime, the video was everywhere. X, TikTok, YouTube, with hashtags like "Teacher Takedown" and "Miss T Kicks Ass" trending across the country. Students whispered in awe, teachers exchanged uneasy glances, and Aisha became a legend. But she knew the fight wasn't over. Westbridge's administration had a history of shielding its athletes, and Tyler's father, Richard Grayson, was a school board heavyweight with a reputation for bending rules. By noon, Aisha was summoned to Principal Hargrove's office, a cramped space that smelled of stale coffee and cowardice. Hargrove, balding and perpetually stressed, leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. "Miss Thompson," he began, his voice dripping with condescension, "this behavior is unacceptable. You assaulted students." Aisha raised an eyebrow, her calm unshaken. "They assaulted me first, sir. I defended myself. There's video evidence." Hargrove shifted, muttering about optics and parental concerns, but Aisha wasn't intimidated. She'd faced worse than bureaucratic spinelessness. What Hargrove didn't know was that Aisha wasn't just a judo champion. She'd grown up in a neighborhood where survival meant outsmarting the system. Her older brother, Marcus, was a civil rights lawyer with a track record of taking down corrupt institutions. Aisha had texted him the video before she even left the hallway. By the time Hargrove finished his lecture, Marcus was on his way, ready to file a formal complaint against the school for failing to protect its staff. But the twists didn't end there. Among the crowd that morning was Maya Carter, a quiet junior with a knack for staying invisible. Maya was the daughter of a local news anchor, and by evening, The story was on every major network, reframed as a young black woman standing up to systemic bullying. The narrative flipped, and Aisha became a symbol of resistance, her story resonating from coast to coast. The next day, Tyler, Dylan, and Connor were suspended, pending an investigation. Aisha's inbox overflowed with messages, some vile, laced with racial slurs and threats, but most supportive, from parents, alumni, and strangers who'd seen the video. A local dojo offered her a guest instructor role, and a community organizer invited her to speak at a youth empowerment event. Aisha wasn't here for fame, though. She returned to her classroom, her lesson plan sharper than ever, weaving stories of resilience, Harriet Tubman, Malcolm X, Angela Davis, into her curriculum. Her students, especially the ones who'd felt invisible, started engaging more, asking questions, lingering after class. Maya, emboldened, started a peer mediation group to tackle bullying. Aisha's judo wasn't just a weapon, it was a spark that ignited change. Weeks later, a bombshell dropped. An anonymous tip, later traced to a guilt-ridden Connor, revealed that Richard Grayson had been pressuring Hargrove to bury incidents involving athletes for years. The school board launched an audit, uncovering a pattern of ignored complaints, particularly against minority staff and students. Hargrove resigned under pressure, and Aisha was offered an apology and a raise. She accepted the latter, but kept her focus on her students. Her judo remained her quiet strength, a shield she carried for the next fight. But the story didn't end there. Aisha's childhood in a tough neighborhood, her mentor at the dojo who saw her potential, and her internal struggle to balance humility with defiance wove a richer tapestry. She started a judo club at Westbridge, training at risk. Teens, giving them a sense of power. Maya's mediation group grew, and a fellow teacher, a soft-spoken math instructor named Jamal, who admired Aisha's fire, became a quiet ally, and maybe something more. The climax came at a packed school board meeting, where Aisha's testimony, backed by Marcus's legal muscle and Maya's heartfelt plea, forced systemic reforms at Westbridge.